right, welcome. Bridging the Virtual Gap, and a very long title after that. But the main premise is we're going to be going over cultural sensitivity, and then I'll plug in some of these nuggets towards what do we have to keep in mind with our new provision in the online platform. So my name is Pamela Cornejo. I am from a little town you might recognize called Las Vegas. It's a little different right now given the current circumstances, and I moved here to go to the U, and I'm a doctoral candidate in counseling psychology. I spend a lot of time kind of like this, especially nowadays. And my favorite part about the work that I do is providing therapy to children and families. And I've spent most of my time in graduate school focusing on school settings and those pieces in particular. I have been providing UAN trainings for the past 3 years, and it is a highlight of my year. I really love everyone who's a part of the UAN and the work that you do. It's so meaningful. So I'm really excited to talk about culture. All right, quick reminders about the platform that we're using now. Please make sure that you're muted unless you're sharing. So make sure to remember we can't hear you unless you unmute yourself. It would be very helpful if you could have your camera on if you have that capacity, especially later on when we're doing group discussions. It's just nice to see each other's faces. You know, right now we're not having a ton of contact in person, so having your camera on allows me to connect a little bit better with all of you. And again, if you have some comments, something you want to say, please use that chat option right there at the bottom of your screen. Please, everyone, go ahead and grab your phone. That's part of the engagement, right? We're thinking of creative ways to still participate even when we're getting nuggets of information and even if we can't see each other's faces. So the two options to participate in some polls that I have coming up is to either text me, well, not me directly, it's a service. You would text that code, Pamela Cornejo 344, to that number. Or you could use your phone to open up a web browser, and then you put that link into your web browser, and it'll allow you to participate in that way too. So I'll go ahead and give you a second to do that.
Pamela, are those case sensitive?
Nope, not at all. At least that's not what I've noticed, is that it's case sensitive. I am noticing that the chat pieces aren't coming up for me as an option to kind of look at. So if I could ask for your support, Amberly and Angel and Kelly, if someone does say something in chat, to let me know.
Yep, we will do that.
Awesome. All right, let's keep going. And if you're like, hey, that's a cool idea, this is coming from the app Poll Everywhere. So you can go online to use it. It's an app that you can use on your own laptop, and it's free. All right, so we've all got our cell phones ready. Could you please text or send through the web browser? What words come to mind when you think of culture?
Pamela, it says the poll is closed.
See that. Here's what I'm gonna do. Pause the share. I'm gonna stop the share for a second. Oh, that's why. Sorry, everybody. Even us seasoned people get these hiccups. Okay, let's try that again and send your words in to see if that will work. Oh, let's see. Is it still not working?
Not yet. It still says that
Not
it's
yet.
that it's closed.
Shoot, hold on. What a bummer. Let me try this again. Okay, well, what I'm gonna do is, even though it's not gonna let me do the poll right now and I don't wanna use up more of our time, so I'm gonna go ahead and just move on to us sharing with our words, or your chat if you want to. So I'm seeing some people say family and traditions, diversity and art and family, tradition again, personal backgrounds, group of people, shared beliefs, unique identity, familial relationships, language, stories. Oh, I love that, stories. Identity, food. Yes, food. Habits. Perfect. Legends. I love that too, yeah. And history. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those pieces. I'll get back to my screen. All right, all of you mention words that basically can capture this, how we traditionally define it. So culture is a part of our customs, beliefs, our attitudes, what we think is typical or expected, our way of life, our identities, what's important to us, our goals and our morals. It's the difference between understanding whether or not pizza is a viable breakfast option, or if you're a little more traditional and go for pancakes. It also lets us know, hey, you're supposed to enjoy your food, maybe quietly, and laugh at the appropriate times in the movie theater, but you're not supposed to get up or anything like that. It's also what lets us know that when we say spill the beans, we're not saying actually spilling your beans, right? It's about sharing some sort of really interesting negative information. And hopefully some of you know that teens don't say spill the beans anymore. We say spill the tea. So keep that in mind if you hear that. Someone's spilling the tea, it's because they're talking about something really interesting, some good gossip. So culture is tied towards our behaviors, our knowledge, and our beliefs. So it comes through in terms of our assumptions, right? Those expectations and thoughts about what we think might be true. So that ties into our shared understanding of the world. Again, what's important to us, how we believe people should be interacting with us, and through our routines. It definitely comes through in our routines and those interactions that we have. And it's everywhere. It's in every single space that we enter. I know we're not entering a lot of spaces right now. However, when this is all over, and when you think about even at the spaces of your own home, every space has an expectation, some rules, some understanding of how we're supposed to interact. It's what tells us that we should be quiet in the library, or that you shouldn't be, if we were in person, you wouldn't stand up and start giving my presentation for me. It's in everything, right? We're like fish who don't know we're in water. And our own identities, so the pieces of who we are, influence what we notice the most. So as I'm getting older, I'm really noticing when I'm around younger people, not at work. So I'm now noticing, like, I get a little surprised when I feel like an older person in public. And, certainly I'll notice if I'm the only person of color in a room, or I might be someone who notices, like, wow, I'm noticing that this person also ordered a lot of food like me, and that makes me feel great. I like to eat. Okay, so again, our own pieces of who we are helps us to notice other things, because we're searching for connection at all times. And because we notice it, so do our children and adolescents too. They just don't have as sophisticated of ways to discuss or recognize it, but they're definitely picking up on it. So here's how it works, the interaction of culture. So you will have your own students, and they have their identities, and then the assumptions or values they place on their identities. And then they have things that are important to them. And then they have those beliefs, right? The thoughts that kind of keep coming into play as we're making decisions and understanding the world. And then that student's perception of you. And you, of course, also are going through the same thing. Have your identities, self-perception of what those mean, how that interacts with your values, beliefs, and then what you are thinking of that student. And then we bring in the environment, or what we would call like society, right? What society is telling us about who we are and other people. And the yellow box represents your program. So even though you're not seeing it all the time, you're not thinking about it, those are all happening simultaneously. So this is the part that you have control over. So even if we know that there are certain students who have these identities or self-perceptions, or the environment tries to tell them, hey, you're not a great student, or you're not good at math, or you're a hard worker, you, because this is your environment, have a lot of power to kind of mitigate those messagings that are coming from the environment. Then at the same time, we don't have that much power, so it's kind of a balancing act. We have nuggets of power and influence and other pieces where we just alone can't change their understanding of how society perceives them. We're talking a lot about culture, and I'm really emphasizing identity. So these nuggets and pieces of you. So here are a couple of traditional ideas of identities. And some of these will be familiar, and some of these might be less of what you would have thought of as an identity. So some really obvious ones: race, ethnicity, your social class, your gender identity and expression, your education, health statuses, employment, ability, disability, social engagement style, introverted, extroverted, somewhere along the spectrum, your age, your social roles, your marital status, your hobbies. When I first moved to Utah, I noticed that there's a very big community of ultimate Frisbee players. I don't know if anyone out there is, but I really enjoyed going to the first game and noticing all the heckling and just like the good fun that they were having. Religious affiliation is very strong here in Utah, the sexual orientation and general temperament. Noticing something in chat, so I'm just noticing. Oh, Kristen, you love ultimate Frisbee. That's awesome. I never played, I just watched. I'm a great cheerleader on the sidelines. Okay, so these are all those identities that we've been talking about that are pieces of you. These all have culture attached to it, some sort of assumption or expectation on you or others because of where you fall within those identities. Now, if we only think about one identity at a time, that's not the whole picture. We know that each identity layers upon itself to really evolve and inform more accurately our experience. So one of my identities is a foodie. I love food. I love eating good food. But I'm also a grad student. So that means I don't have a big budget to go to really, really nice restaurants. I got to learn how to cook, for myself if I want to try something out. And again, as each of my identities are layered on, that really gives a more accurate picture of who I am, right? Just one identity isn't enough. And so this is so important for us when we're thinking through with our students, that we're layered, right? And normally when we look at people, in the past, we really emphasized on visible identities. So what we think we know about somebody based on what we see. And our world is progressively becoming more and more leaning towards invisible identity, meaning we can't assume, right? It used to be the tip of the iceberg, like we could guess someone's gender identity or their values, or, by the clothes they wear, what does that mean? And that's just not the case anymore. In fact, we're getting more, foot and mouth sort of moments as we continue to rely on our vision or what we're seeing of people. More often than not, we just have to just assume we really have no idea what we know about these people, even if we do have clues or hints about it. So as Shrek would say, and can you believe this reference is 19 years old? I can't believe it, but Shrek would say, we're like onions, we're like ogres, we have lots and lots of layers. And if the onion doesn't do it for you, then please know that you're a puzzle piece. So every identity that you have is a piece of who you are. And even if we share identities, even if all of us work with students, there are so many other puzzle pieces a part of us arranged in different ways, and maybe some of our identities are bigger pieces and some of them are smaller, and they might not be mirrored in one another, so we're unique in that way too. So if everyone could take out their cell phone or paper and pen, whatever you're feeling like, please write down, what are your identities? So I'll give you a second to do that. Notice which ones you wrote down first. I hope that you're still writing by now, because you are, like I said, you've got a lot of layers. There's a lot of depth to you. And even though these are just some of the more, the first ones you kind of think about, there are so many more that I didn't include on here, so many that I didn't capture. And what's important to note is that these shape your values, beliefs, and choices. So if you think about your list, which ones really come up for you? Which ones guide your life? All right, so let's just do a few, do the poll again. This is the last time I did this training. This is what other people said. When asked, how would you want your students to describe your program? So in the chat box, if you could, write down, what would you want your student to say?
All right, so we have fun, safe, engaging, family, loving and safe, valuable, safe again, inclusive twice, fun and safe, engaging, fun and loving. So fun and safe and inclusivity, those are big ones. Supportive, community, comfortable, accepting, all the team, understanding.
Yeah, so it sounds like UAN, like all of you consistently think of the same sort of adjectives. You want your students to be enjoying their experience, knowing that they're in a safe and comfortable environment where they are being cared for, as well as just supported, right? And that they're actually following through on what we're hoping to accomplish during that time period, which is getting them through their education experience. Yeah, when it comes to the more nitty-gritty of culture, there are 3 words that I would encourage you to embody. So the first is to be humble, the second is to be open, and then the third is to be brave. So we try to create closeness, meaning some connection, by bringing our assumptions and small bits of information into our interactions. This is something we naturally do. So some examples of these are, you might have heard or you might have said yourself, like, where are you from? And in many cases, the intention of that is curiosity, or just kind of knowing they're not actually local, or we assume that they're not local. This is problematic because people who are not white are more often asked this question. And even if the intention isn't to harm or to create discomfort, unfortunately it does, because if you're asked the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, the subliminal messaging is, somehow I don't quite fit. And so a different way of asking this question would be like, how long have you lived in Utah? Are you local to Utah? And these are asking similar things without the same connotation. Another one is when, when I share that I have Mexican lineage, someone might say, oh, I really love Mexican food. And the thing about that is I wasn't talking about Mexican food. So we have to be very careful about naming something that we enjoy, or saying, well, oh, I've been to Mexico. And, that's wonderful. I haven't been to Mexico in a minute, but we still can't quite say that, because it makes someone, like, we get it. We see the connection. Oh, they want to show an interest in my cultural identity. But the best way to do that is to ask questions. And to ask your questions as open as possible. So not as specific. Oh, okay, you're from Mexico, wonderful. So have you visited Mexico recently? Or, what was your favorite piece growing up? Or something like that. That's not about, well, were you born here? Or, it gets very awkward very quickly in those ways. And sometimes when people tell us tidbits about our culture, even if it was here locally in Utah, some assumptions about, I live in Utah. Well, do you ski? And I'm like, no, I don't, right? I mean, it can happen with any of our identities. And the important piece to notice of that is intent versus impact. We intend to say something, but our messaging can get kind of confused along the way. So that's the emphasis with being humble. We can't bring in what we think we know, because more often than not, it doesn't always apply. Because as we've mentioned, our identities are so layered that it makes us pretty unique in that way. So remember, there are cultural nuances, and try to notice, why do I feel like I need to say that? Because there's a reason there. And the more you reflect on it, the more you're able to unpack, oh, well, I really like this person and I want to show that I appreciate them. And if that's the case, there are other ways that we can communicate that. So sometimes we're so caught up in our routines, right? We have our programming to get through that we don't take advantage of opportunities to connect. So someone might say, oh, I had this thing going on, or, I had my bar mitzvah, or, I was baptized, or, any other sort of piece, or someone says, I had my quinceañeras coming up, or I really want, to have one of those. And we're like, that's wonderful. And then move on. And that's a missed opportunity to learn more about something that's very important for your student. And it's completely understandable. We have a lot of pressure to complete a lot of things in our time, and so that happens. Or, they'll offer us gifts or invite us to something because we have entered a very important space for them. So we have to do the best that we can to engage in these conversations, even if it means we can't behaviorally follow through, because all of this is tied to culture. So do the best you can to explore and encourage conversations about cultural background, your values and experiences. So the more that we talk about it, the more that it becomes a safe space to just acknowledge, like, oh, we're different. We have different expectations, and that's perfectly okay. And then for our own spaces, we can't compromise on some of our expectations, because that's where we're at with our norms, our own cultural expectations. So we just have to talk through it. So there's a mutual understanding of why. Another thing that comes up is we don't want to make mistakes or offend someone. So that leads us to not engaging. And that's perfectly understandable. And even though I have the language for engaging in these conversations, I still make mistakes. And I certainly still sometimes just let things kind of pass, because timing is important. Again, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. As long as we're humble about it. I have sincerely apologized many, many times for my own mistakes when I'm in conversations with people, and that's appreciated. So lean into any conversation that you can. Understand, why do I feel uncomfortable about this? All right, we're gonna take 10 minutes and let's have a group discussion. Angel is going to, or at some point when someone is the host, we're gonna split up into groups to discuss these 3 questions. How do the identities and cultures within your staff and students impact your programming? So what are you noticing is coming up? And how is your program building a sense of community for students? Right now, so many of us feel completely disconnected because the spaces that gave us a sense of belonging aren't there. So how is your program thinking through that? And what are the specific challenges and needs? So I'll pause, stop my share.
Are we breaking out right now, Pamela?
Oh, am I?
Are we breaking out into rooms?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's get to talking.
Okay, 1 second, everybody. Okay, and how long are we going to be in the breakout rooms, Pamela?
Let's go for 10 minutes.
Cool, sounds good. Okay, see you all soon.
Could, communicate with when needed.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I feel like, so I'm Pepper. I work at Boys and Girls Club and Sugar House. Hi, Angel.
Hey, Pepper.
Um, so I feel like at our club, like we do have some of that same aspect going on, but also I think that they tried to hire people of all different cultures so that like all of the kids could fit in because we have such a diverse community there.
South in price, and so our needs are a little different. We do have some Hispanic, but most of it is just kids in poverty and feeling isolated from the resources that a lot of families might have up north. So we try to do things that include all of our schools and get them together, and then plan field trips so that they can experience some things that are outside of our area.
Yeah, awesome. So that's definitely coming through right now in terms of accessibility. Do you think that given everything that's been going on, there's something that you have to do a little bit different?
We really don't know our place at all right now. So
Oh, absolutely. We're all like, well, what are we supposed to do? Yeah.
I think some of your programs are still running virtually, but ours is completely shut down.
Wow.
So we're helping out in the kitchen. Our school district is delivering lunches on the bus route. So some of us are helping out there, and I'm actually one that's just home. I'm expecting a baby, and so they're kind of just letting me learn from home, and I don't know. It's a weird time that we're in.
Oh, totally. And I definitely want to give time to acknowledge like these are very strange times. I am going to jump around to other rooms, but thank you so much for sharing, and please continue to chat about all those pieces. And later on, I'll have my email in case I could be of use.
Can you put the pieces back up, the other questions?
Guys, do you have those? Can you throw those in the chat?
Yeah, I could do, and that's what I was about to ask you, Angel. I was looking for your email.
There,
And
I
I have-
chatted them to us, or I can actually just throw them in. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pamela, and good luck on the rest of your education.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth.
Okay, this group, here we go. There are your questions. Pamela, we're going to room 1. Do you guys see them in the chat box down below?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, see you all soon.
So, Chris, thank you.
Yep.
And
I'm from Utah, or that I don't speak Spanish, and sometimes when I work now with Majo with Maria, I work in a school where it's bilingual, and I speak to the teachers in Spanish and they respond to me in English, and I'm like, wait, Spanish is my first language. And that can happen the other way too. Like if someone says like, oh yeah, I'm half whatever, and maybe they're Hispanic, I assume they know Spanish and I talk to them, and sometimes they're like, oh wait, but I don't speak Spanish. We have a coworker like that. He's, I think, half Colombian as well, but he doesn't speak Spanish. And so sometimes he says like parents just talk to him in Spanish, and he's like, oh, I don't speak Spanish, sorry. So I think for us it's like normal, like you're Hispanic, you speak Spanish, or if you're white, then you're from the States.
I'm providing is getting to all of our students and parents because that was something that was really lacking on my part.
Thanks for sharing and for trying new things. It's always scary sometimes to try new platforms and learn new things. And it's great.
Yeah, I actually work with Leslie, and we work at a dual immersion school. So our school is largely Latino or Hispanic. So all of us are, or most of us are Spanish speaking, but we all come from different countries. So that's something we like to incorporate a lot into our lessons or into our big activities, is learning about not only the Hispanic culture, but every single country within and how different they can be too.
That's great.
During this COVID school dismissal time, our programs are not offering,
and so I think it's great to see that fostered.
Angel, we're just discussing the second question and how the identities and cultures of students and staff are impacting programming.
Awesome. Nice. So do
Just
you
so you
guys,
know.
do you have those questions? The 3 questions that I sent you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We have about 3 more minutes.
Okay.
So just
Let's move on to the last question then, guys. What are the specific challenges and
Hey, Angel.
Hi, everybody.
We're on question 3 if you want to hop in.
Awesome. We have about 3 minutes left.
Woohoo! Hey, Talia. A lot of students really need help with their schoolwork. Yeah.
Talia, speak up, my guy. We want to hear that voice.
You know, people's mics aren't working today.
Krista, we want to hear you too. David and Fabio, I don't know you guys.
They don't get a personal call out.
Well, you guys do too. David and Fabio, we want to hear you guys too. Okay, see you all soon.
Bye. Yes, a lot of students really need help with their schoolwork. Are there
or be a part of your communities, but every little bit that you're doing is essential right now. And I hope that you're all taking time to allow yourself to take a break when you need to, or to grieve in the ways that you need to. These are really difficult times, and nothing that we're doing is perfect, but I know everyone in the UAN is working really hard to fulfill the roles that that brought you to this work.
And definitely in each of your programs too. And the after school community.
And I know we only have 2 minutes, but for the rest of you, where are you located? Where are your programs?
My name is Alessa, and I'm at the Midvale Boys and Girls Club with Laura. I don't know if she's right there, but she's right here next to me.
Alessa's the junior director, and I'm the teen director.
That's where I used to be, Pamela. I used to work with those ladies over at the club. And then Yalev, where are you guys from?
I am with the person that's named Majo, but her real name is Maria. We are in the Dual Immersion Academy here in Salt Lake in, how do you call this, Glendale area?
Glendale. Yep.
Yep, so we're there.
All right. 1 more minute, guys.
Hey everyone. I'm not sure if we're all back or not just yet. Are we all back, Angel?
We will be in 2 seconds, 1 second.
Okay.
And I think everybody's back now.
Okay, perfect. So let's keep this hustle on, because I want to have a little bit of time at the end in case there are any specific questions or reflections or all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can jump back. Okay, so we just had those big discussions. I loved hearing from everyone in terms of what ideas you've traditionally had about how to engage your community. And it sounds like, you know, as I expected, you're all super in tune with what is it that's coming up for your specific communities that you work with. takeaways are that culture is layered, your identity shape what we perceive, and that's perfectly natural and normal. It's just important for us to be aware of that. And authenticity goes a long way. You don't have to be anyone other than yourself. And acknowledging who you are and letting yourself be that with your authenticity with your students goes a long way. They don't really think we're that cool, and that's okay. We don't have to be cool. We just have to be ourselves. And mistakes are going to happen. All right, so now that we're all transitioning into this social distancing, form of existence, it's really important to think about, like, what do we do to make sure that, even though we're looking at a screen, do I feel like I'm still having this moment with you? Am I still feeling connected? And it's absolutely possible. The research suggested it's just about how we intentionally use our technology. So for me, the main three things that are happening with the impact of COVID, outside of the impact globally or financially or economically and all those pieces, I'm just going to keep it towards when we're working with our students, because we know that there are some large impacts. We just can't cover it all within the next, 15 minutes. One of the things you're going to notice is a virtual fatigue if you are still providing things virtually. If you're not used to looking at your screen all day, if you're not used to having your face like right here where it feels like I'm actually talking to you, like if we were like this, that's really uncomfortable. And so you might notice yourself not connecting. It's difficult because I'm not in the room with you. You're looking at your laptop or your phone, and I'm looking at my laptop too while I'm sitting by my bed, and so there's just these pieces that are really, really different, and we have to keep that in mind. And for our students, they too are experiencing virtual fatigue. So in your programs, how are you allowing time to disconnect from this moment? Are you giving them stretch breaks? Do they have a moment to like run around and come back, and so we just have to be a little understanding about, we're going to notice them look really bored on screen because they forget to monitor their facial expressions, and that's normal. Additionally, that brings us to anxiety and distress is really high for everyone, right? We're right now managing how to lean into this discomfort. And there's a lot of grief and grieving. And I know personally, I'm experiencing, my parents they work in casinos, and one of them's unemployed. And my mom, on the other hand, is running around 30,000 steps a day doing her job because there's no one else in the casino. And so we're all managing something. And so how are you in your programs incorporating time for mindfulness? To acknowledge that things are weird, an emotional check-in, like how are we doing today? And even our young ones can say, I'm tired, I don't want to be here, or I don't want to do my homework, right? I mean, just giving them a second to say, things aren't normal, it's not okay, even though we're expected in some ways to continue. And I hear from some of you that your programming is not the same, that even in your own life, are you allowing some time to acknowledge that we're all feeling anxious and distressed and a million of other things too? And additionally, family roles are different. Some of our students are no longer just students, and before school was a break from some of their family roles, and now it might be more intensified. They might be expected to take on more. And so have you asked your students what has changed since programming has happened? And even when we're back to normal, whatever time that is, this still comes up, right? Some people have to babysit or have a specific window to do their homework. Or expected to work. So we have to keep in mind, are we aware of those pieces with our students? And if we're uncomfortable to ask, then, are we missing out on key pieces that help us understand how they're engaging with school? Again, there's so much more out there about COVID and things to think about. If it's helpful, maybe I'll include a handout of resources in terms of just what is coming up for people, and some, I'll include that in a handout. All right, so when it comes to, in general, what helps us feel connected is our communication style. And it's the simplest thing that we can do. So we're gonna use this acronym for ourselves, OARS. This is how we're navigating the waters of connection. So you're going to use open-ended questions. It's going to feel really simple, like, I think I've done these things before, and I know you have, but this is why we go to therapists, because they ask us to talk more about how we're doing. So the reason we want to do open-ended instead of closed-ended, meaning Did you have a good day? That's yes or no. It doesn't give us much information. But if we ask, how did your day go yesterday? People will respond with whatever was most salient to them, most important. So that's what's really helpful for us. Next part is, it's good when people ask about us and they say, that sounds hard, that wasn't great. And essentially letting us know and that they recognize some of our hardships. So try to be as affirming as you can. And reflections, it lets us know that you're listening. A lot of our students can be kind of chatty, right? And we just have to do 1 or 2 sentences to let them know, oh, so it was rough because this happened with your sibling, right? And then there's others that are even more chatty and don't know when to stop, right? And we're sitting there with a story, you know, how are you doing, to like their life story. And so we want to summarize with, okay, so this person did this, and so you felt this way. Okay, I hear you, right? We're just summarizing. And very, very simple 4 things that we can do to let people know that we're actually there, right? And that instantly builds connection. Now, this is really important in person, and now especially virtually when we can't kind of follow up very quickly. Our body posture is very important. So even if you're just resting and you have your arms crossed, people read it like from a biophysical place, read it as something else. You know, we don't really want to look like this guy when we're doing our virtual program or even in person. You can feel this way inside. A lot of us are feeling this inside, but we just can't show it. You know, Oprah does a very good job. You know, she's had a lot of people share things on her couch. It's because she's doing this, right? This makes all of us feel like we're being listened to. And the timing of your nods are so important. If we have students sharing, you know, my parent is a beep, and you're like, oh yeah, you just agreed, right? It's like if you had said it. So try, be very careful about your timing, but even just tilting your head when you're virtually talking to someone lets them know instinctively, oh, they're listening, right? Or even if you do one of these, like it can be very subtle things that let us know that you actually care. Here's some ways that we accidentally create more distance between us instead of creating closeness. So I mentioned it earlier, intent versus impact. So intent, the goal or hope for the message given to the listener, versus how it's actually understood and what they made sense of it. So you might hear this sometimes, or you might see someone say like, wow, you look great today. And the intent was, hey, I'm noticing whatever, right? And then they're like, hold on, well, how do I normally look, right? The impact was actually, I'm questioning why this is being brought up now. So we just have to keep that in mind. Another piece is we sometimes accidentally minimize emotion or experience, and that might happen now. We might tell somebody it's going to be fine, and maybe things aren't fine. And we have to try to not say something we can't promise, right? Or, well, at least you did this. And you know, for some people that's not enough. So we have to be very careful, or I'm sure it will work out. You know, the most important thing we can do is tell someone things are hard right now. And they're going to say, yeah, you get me, even if you don't know everything, because you're not expected to know all the answers or to know what's going to happen in the future. The other thing that we kind of do is, you know, you've had that moment where someone's like, well, I think we should do this. And you're like, and you're ready. You've got your response ready to go, or you know the answer to this problem. And the thing is, if you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're not actually listening, right? There's going to be pieces that you're going to miss. So do your best when someone's saying something to you. Listen as closely as you can. The other thing is, we'll see a problem. Now, some of our youngsters are not great problem solvers. They're just not, you know, they don't have our experience or our wisdom. And so we're ready. We know what would be helpful. The problem is we might see the situation and think, oh, that kid's really angry. We got to manage it. He gets, you know, they're explosive on this. But maybe they just needed a nap. You know, some of us are a little snippy when we're hungry. And that doesn't mean that we are mad at that person. We're just hungry. So that can come up for everybody. I wanted to pause here and see if anyone has any observations or questions. Looks like something's coming up in chat. Kelly's noting, like, be in the moment with people. I agree. I think that's what we should do. However, I want to acknowledge also, it is really hard right now to be in the moment because things feel so strange. I'm going to stop the share so we can see each other. And let me know if you need the email again, in case of anything. And we do have that exit survey. So maybe I'll share my screen one more time so that you all have that information.
I'll also be dropping a link in the chat box to make it easier to click.
Perfect. If you don't have any questions, that's okay. Maybe you're like, I'm not actually seeing my kiddos, and that's fine. But if you want to share a reflection or something that came up for you during the presentation, that would be awesome.
All right, the link for the survey is in the chat box. If anybody has questions, let us know.
Katie is noting, it's hard to integrate working from home and our own family culture with working with others virtually. Yeah, so the layering just got a little more complex. Having us be in different spaces was helpful for us to be able to focus and prioritize on different things. And so I want to normalize right now that, if you have children, if you have fur babies, the demands placed on us are higher than normal. So instead of thinking about this from a traditional sense where students are supposed to be in school from 8 to 5, that's just not the reality of things. And realistically, our children are fine if they get 2 hours of actual focus educational activities, especially because so much of what they do in class is be social anyways. So if you get like a solid 1 hour of work and focus, that's great. And they need breaks anyway. So it's okay right now if you're working at really odd hours. If you're like, well, I'm up at 7 and I work 7 to 9, and then we don't work again until 3 or 4 when my kiddos sleep again, or I can't work until I take my dog for a walk. Otherwise she's on me and I can't do anything about it, or she's going to rip up my carpet. So I think, having a lot of compassion toward yourself and others if your schedule looks really strange right now, and whatever works, works. Yaleve said, I liked how you said that it's okay to recognize that we are virtually tired. I noticed that in me, and I forgot to think about the kids and if they feel the same way. And it's very possible that they do. I mean, so much of middle school and high school is like hitting each other, and like being in physical closeness and stuff. And now they don't, so many of our kids might be really missing the affection that they get from their peers and that source of connection in that way. And that's really hard to not have anymore. Maxine mentioned, I have a better understanding of my daughter's school culture and the importance of social engagement. Absolutely, as we get older, we start to feel it's okay that I don't want to see anybody right now. Like, this has been great. And for some of us, it's been horrible to not have that connection and presence and break anymore. And for, some of our students, those unsafe environments are even more intense. And so if you can also, if you're still seeing your students, be very careful and try to see if you can, notice that they are physically okay right now, because we are seeing a surge of domestic violence, especially in Utah has some of the highest increase across the country. And so we have to be very mindful of that. And that's of the stuff that's being reported. So you can't even imagine how much is truly happening that isn't being reported right now. And I don't know if maybe your staff could think about specific words that you could use in the chat to have your students share instead of say out loud. Things like that. Or if you could do a survey of some sort that could be anonymous for students to share something that's coming up for them. Or, just getting as creative as we can to kind of allow our students to know about resources So I'll make a note to myself. I hope you're all familiar with Safe UT, that app that allows students to report or share concerns to their school and things like that. But I'll definitely share the COVID. I don't know if you have heard of the COVID children's book. It's offered in many, many, many languages. I think it's just good hygiene book for people to talk about in terms of washing your hands. But please reach out. You'll have my email if you need anything else. Does anyone else have something that they want to share?
I loved Elizabeth's comment in here too. It got kind of stuck in the middle, but she says that she really likes thinking how to reword questions, making them more general and unspecific. I also will be working on that, Elizabeth. I think it's so important, especially right now, because I feel like I'm trying really hard to connect with people. And sometimes that feels like it takes more effort, but then I should be even more careful about like, what am I asking? Like, and how is that coming across? Because I think we're all extra sensitive right now. And so how can I like help like alleviate some of that potential uncomfortability, I guess.
It might feel strange, but the simpler your response, the more impact it has. Well, I've been having a hard time, and someone saying, "Me too." You know, like, "Oh, you just normalized it. It was a share, a disclosure. You know, you're connected in that moment." So even if it's simple, you know, if you're unsure, even if it's simple, will mean a lot. So glad that you enjoyed the training, Mikkel. I hope you said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. I'm hopeful that this was engaging and that you have, even if it was to validate that y'all are doing some great things. And I heard some really amazing ideas.
All right. So if there aren't any more questions, please remember to fill out the exit survey and the reflection questions with the link that was dropped in the chat. I'm going to drop it one more time. Pamela, thank you again from all of us to you. Thank you for jumping on after school and being a part of our world for a day. And we'd love to have you again. So thank you again.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. So good to see everyone.